Welcome to Blueprints to Buildings podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer, and on this show, I interview the movers and the shakers in the world of property development and real estate. Now, this show is supported by something few developers are quietly been using to get their projects funded and sold a lot faster. And now that is without touching original 3D models. Now, it's early, it's clever, and it's changing how people see off-plan property. I'll leave it there, but if you're curious, message me on LinkedIn at Glen Palmer Online or check out the show notes below. So today's guest is Heather Deitch. Now, she is an industrial designer and founder of Noteworthy Studios, where she creates very thoughtful furniture, lighting, and architectural products that blend function, beauty, and story. Now, with a background spanning architecture, industrial design, and working with brands like Bernhardt Design, HBF, Trushi, and Pavilion, Heather brings a brilliant mix of spatial thinking, craftsmanship, and commercial design insight. Heather, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come chat with me. So I
Yeah, thank you
appreciate
for
it.
having me. Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here.
And many of my listeners concentrate on the build phase, but internal decor is just as important. So I'm quite keen to jump into this episode. So without further ado, let's get straight stuck in with the very first question that I like to ask everybody. And that is, if time travel became a reality and you had a chance to go back in time to when you first started your career, what advice would the person that you are now tell your younger self?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. Because it feels like it's been a path. So I would say early in my career, like working with different companies, I was aware of business agendas, strategies, like the typical stuff, that sort of aligns within different leadership positions or just companies themselves. But I understood that my role as a designer was to contribute creatively
Hmm.
in a way that supported profitability, and I took that, pretty seriously. But I think sometimes that meant that I held back as a designer because I was worried that I'd put ideas in folders, and I thought I'd do that because I wasn't sure if it was going to align with the brand or if it was what the leadership was asking for or expecting. And yeah, I definitely fall into the pleaser kind of category, as a
Yeah.
person. But now I would say as with more experience, I realize that some of those moments I probably should have shared more and not been so afraid. And I think the other part I realize is that the number of truly visionary voices in the room is often really small. And
Yeah.
designers, need to know that it's okay to share perspectives and that they typically fall into that camp as the visionary ones. So looking back, I think I forgot that detail,
Hmm.
I just didn't have the confidence yet to speak up and realize that I did have a voice that could be valued. So that would
Yeah.
be the advice, looking
Nice.
back. So
Nice. Yeah, I'm a bit of a people pleaser as well, I must admit. Uh,
yeah,
but yeah, you get into that thing where, you know, you think at times you just got to think for yourself and you got to do things that you want to do. And at the end of the day, it could be for the greater of the company. It could be for, it might be the wrong thing to do. But I believe now that you need to take that step. You need to take that step forward to grow. So yeah,
yeah.
Heather, you pretty much sit on the intersection of architecture and industrial design. So, how has that combination shaped the way you approach creating products that are both visually striking and genuinely useful to use?
Well, I guess because I studied architecture first, I naturally think about spaces, context, and how the product fits in that room, like that it's
Mm,
not in isolation. And as an industrial designer, I spend more time considering how the piece relates to the surroundings and how it interacts with other objects, and ultimately how somebody's going to use it. So I basically toggle back and forth between how an architect thinks about space and how an industrial designer thinks about things.
Yeah.
And it sort of, I mean, I think I recently told a friend that if I hadn't gone to architecture school, I wouldn't understand the room.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like because I did that first when I went to industrial design, it was an easy progression for me not to forget about that world and how the two relate.
Yeah. So on your site, you talk about creating timeless products from thought to reality. So when you're designing furniture or architectural products for that matter, what do you think separates sort of timeless from something that just, follows the trend?
Yeah, I think for me, timelessness is important. And I take it as a form of restraint, being reductive in how a product's designed and how it feels. And I feel like I value these things because it's about using materials in a smart way. It's about like creating a sense of value, and that something's not like I'm trying to go down the path of that something's not easily overlooked or thrown away.
Hmm.
And I feel like if I can create a product that stays with someone over time, it really resonates with them. It gets passed down generationally, and that I've really done my
Yeah.
job. And then I also find that timeless products tend to stay in a company's portfolio a lot longer, not only like being involved in design, but tracking how things perform. And so
Yeah.
from a business perspective, like businesses love that, right? They want things to be profitable, they want it to stay. So I think it's sort of like a winning approach. For me, trends can be compelling, and I definitely understand the appeal and coolness factor, and I definitely pay attention. But I often find that it's just design history repeating itself if you kind of step
Yeah.
back and think about it. And then I think they're a helpful point to look at from a form and color perspective, like for studies. But lately I also feel like can be lead to fast fashion mindset, and where things are just quickly discarded, and that bothers me. And so it's something that I push against,
Yeah.
and I push more towards the path of meaningful, enduring products that resonate with people and brands.
Nice. And so Noteworthy Studios, they seem to go, well, you seem to go beyond the product design into brand, the storytelling, and even the spaces. So, how important is a narrative behind a product now, especially for brands that want to design, to drive that business growth rather than just, looking good?
Yeah. So for me, it's pretty simple. I think product narratives are about telling a story well. And
Yeah.
I feel like storytelling is the universal language. It's kind of like a sketch, right? Like everybody can understand a good sketch, and everybody can understand a good story. And so if when I'm going down the path of thinking about cultures, people, what like is going to stick, I use storytelling, and at a really basic level, every good story has a clear beginning, middle, and end. And
Hmm.
so every time I go down that path for a presentation, that's where I start. I think about
Yeah.
that. And then in design, it's in the end, it's a tool, and I think it's a helpful tool because some of the ideas can be complex, especially like really creative ones. And you get in the sort of pit of doing it for a living, and you're just like, oh my goodness, how am I going to explain this one? I and so I find it's a great way to be clear and concise.
Yeah.
Lately I go for like I think it used to be like, well, I still do it, like a minute or less if it's a concept film. 30 seconds is brilliance. 8 seconds, like Firefly makes you do, is like craziness, but it can be done. And so
Mm.
I kind of use that as a challenge, but it's also the bridge between what's in someone's mind and how other people understand it. And
Yeah.
then and I also lastly think it's this that narratives and storytelling are effective for aligning teams. And
Yeah.
today, so many decisions are made in companies with cross-functional groups, and they all have different perspectives and backgrounds.
Yeah.
So usually when I show up with a strong narrative, it's a bit the glue, and
Yeah.
it's the thing that brings those viewpoints together. And through the whole process of concept to production, it makes sure that that idea is carried through all those feedback loops and it's still relevant. So whether it's a product, a space, a brand, um, I just think it's an extremely valuable tool.
Yeah. And you're talking about cultural bits there. Do you take different bits from different cultures in your designs?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on, I've lived a lot of different places. I've been exposed to many things throughout a lifetime. And I think that I'm not unique. I think a lot of, everyone's kind of it has their own story to tell in that respect. But I use it from in this perspective, like where did ideas originate? Where, like that I'm trying to relate to my design. And then if there is a specific culture where it's more prominently known, that type of thing that I'm referencing, then
Mm.
I'll go there and I'll try to understand a little bit of, what was the origin. I guess the amount of research that I admittedly do, I don't really talk about it, just to kind of do it. But
Yeah.
what I think's nice right now is, especially with AI, it's become a lot easier to get random bits of information and synthesize,
Yeah.
and make it known,
Yeah.
so
And you've worked across a multitude of things from furniture to lighting, architectural products, material innovation, and immersive environments. And so, out of all of those worlds, where do you currently see the most exciting opportunities for innovation?
yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily new, but I think some of the most exciting opportunities in general for innovation, this has probably been going on for a bit, is the intersection of art and science.
Yeah.
And right now, what I keep running into is there's a wave of incredible companies, like whether they're startups or just innovative businesses that are doing sustainable materials. And
Mm.
what I've been noticing is that there's a gap between how those materials are being understood and then how they're being applied to products. And somehow I've navigated or found my path into discovering who these are and how to apply it. But there's quite a bit of like vetting. Like I'll see something at a trade show, or I'll find something online and I'll order materials, and I do all this sort of like behind the scenes stuff. And then if I see the potential, then I go down the lane of thoughtfully integrating it into my design work. But the reality of that too is like those are, I call them material potential projects. The
Yeah.
ability to, I guess, survive as a designer financially, or like figure out how to make that work in your favor, like that's tricky because there is a bit of speculativeness, and many of those
Mm.
companies are truly startups and they're not generally in a position to hire a contract designer, so that's the challenge. I wish I could do more of it, I guess, is where I'm
Yeah.
going. I have to be
Yeah.
selective. So
So, and finally, a lot of developers and design-led brands still to this day struggle to help clients really see a product or a space before it
Mhm.
exists. Now, what role do you think like 3D visualizations, digital twins, immersive presentation tools, how can they help play or play a role in designing ideas that land faster and a lot more clearly?
I think really the visualization part is it's crucial, and it has been always, but right now, really, whether it's 2D or 3D, because I'll find myself sometimes just sketching something quickly to get an idea across, and then other times having a full-on design deck or 3D models or whatever to convey it. But it's
Hmm.
essential, I think, for others to understand and truly see the work. Going back to the visionary part of it, not everyone visualizes ideas the same,
Yeah.
and basically, the part of the responsibility of a designer is to be that visionary one and show up with the right tools. So I'm generally emphasizing what's the best way to communicate this idea. How are we going to see this in the best light? If it's a lighting project, I find those are harder to render. And but the closer you can get to the experience of a light, the more convincing it is. And so that's right now with AI and a lot of the digital tools where I'm spending some time is trying to figure out how to make those presentations better. Because that like anytime you go into a theater or a space where you see lighting change or evolve, there isn't a question that from a psychological perspective resonates with someone, but getting
Mm.
to that point where you can actually show it in a video, or some sort of space for someone to see before it's even created, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
So I think the part right now is the key elements. You've got to have the right minds making the key decisions to make sure the content's rich, um, and that those results are still leading down an impactful, good decision making. And I do feel like there's a little bit of a backlash right now where I'll hear design friends of mine say, "Oh, this looks like it was generated by AI," versus other things where they're like, "Oh, this is," they go back to the story. And it's like if you
Yeah.
can get down the lane where you're not getting the it looks like AI, but it feels like something meaningful, and then that's where that's where you get the
Yeah.
good decisions.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some phenomenal tools out there that have come onto the
Yeah.
market. One of the ones that come to mind is Meta-Dology. And
Hmm.
they use 3D visualization, immersive tools where you can use turn on lights and then it contextualizes it to the furniture around it, which I think is amazing. So you can test out your different bulbs and see how they react
Yeah.
within the environment. And yeah, I think it's going to get to a place, look at the gaming industry now.
Hmm.
You get some really real lifelike games. And I think as that technology evolves, it's going to get a lot more easier for people like you, for building contractors and all sorts of people to be able to visualize a lot easier. So
Yeah.
yeah, Heather, thank you very much again,
You're
taking time out, coming on the show, sharing your expertise. I can clearly see that you take pride in everything going onto your website and stuff.
Yeah.
And to me, you're more akin to a artist designing beautiful pieces for interiors. So, keep up the good work. Uh,
Thank you.
and also, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you very much for my listeners and viewers of YouTube as well. Heather, before we finish off here, if listeners or viewers want to get in touch with you and perhaps hire you to create a new unique piece of furniture or architectural piece, how can they actually do that?
So my studio name is Noteworthy Studio, and I've got a website. It's noteworthy-studio.com, and just reach out through that portal, and I'll be glad to um, hear what you have, and hopefully collaborate on something interesting, meaningful, remarkable, cool, noteworthy, of course.
Excellent. And I'll make sure to put that in the show notes below as well.
Cool.
As a quick reminder, this episode was supported by a PropTech visual platform is how forward-thinking developers plan, pitch, and sell. Now, it isn't mainstream yet, but it soon will be. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve, you know exactly where to find me. You've been listening to Blueprints to Buildings podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer, and today I was joined by Heather Deitch. Is that how you say it? Deitch?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. You got it. Yep.
Thanks again for listening and watching, and I will see you all on the next episode.